In this video, I'm going to be taking a look at ChatGPT plugins generally, and also specifically accessing a large PDF file that's 506 pages long, and I'll be using a plugin to access it and ask questions. So I thank you for stopping by, and let's go ahead and get started. First of all, let's take a quick look at the OpenAI ChatGPT plugins page. Here we can see they've said that they've implemented initial support for plugins in ChatGPT. There are tools designed specifically for language models with safety as a core principle and help ChatGPT access up-to-date information, run computations, or use third-party services. And they go on to say they're gradually rolling out plugins in ChatGPT so they can study their real world use, their impact, and safety and alignment challenges, all of which they'll have to get right in order to achieve their mission. Users have been asking for plugins since they launched ChatGPT. Plugin developers who have been invited off their wait list can use the documentation, which they link to there, to build a plugin for ChatGPT, which then lists the enabled plugins in the prompt shown to the language model, as well as documentation to instruct the model how to use each. So they show some of the initial ones. Then they go on to mention here that they're hosting two plugins themselves, a web browser and a code interpreter. They've also open sourced the code for a knowledge base retrieval plugin to be self-hosted by any developer with information which they'd like to augment ChatGPT. So that's pretty interesting. Today, we will begin extending plugin alpha access to users and developers from their waitlist. And I think this is important, the overview. Language models today, while useful for a variety of tasks, are still limited. The only information they can learn from is their training data. This information can be out of date and is one size fits all across applications. Furthermore, the only thing language models can do out of the box is emit text. This text can contain useful instructions, but to actually follow these instructions, you need another process. Though not a perfect analogy, plugins can be the eyes and ears for language models, giving them access to information that is too recent, too personal, or too specific to be included in the training data. In response to a user's explicit request, plugins can also enable language models to perform safe, constrained actions on their behalf, increasing the usefulness of the system overall. So I think that's really good to take a look at, and if you want more, you can read here on their webpage, which I will include in the description box below. They go on to talk about safety and broader implications, how they're implementing safeguards, and just other really good information. So give that a look if you want more details. If you decided to keep scrolling, you'll see examples here in short videos: ChatGPT browsing plugin demo, code interpreter, ChatGPT interpreter plugin demo, the open source retrieval plugin enables ChatGPT to access personal or organizational information sources with permission. It allows users to obtain the most relevant document snippets from their data sources, such as files, notes, emails, public documentation, by asking questions or expressing needs in natural language. As an open source and self-hosted solution, developers can deploy their own version of the plugin and register it with ChatGPT. The plugin leverages the OpenAI embeddings and allows developers to choose a vector database, Milvus, Pinecone, Redis, and others, for indexing and searching documents. Information sources can be synchronized with the database using webhooks. So anyway, I think there's some more really good information here. Take a look. if you look at the bottom of the page, you'll see related research such as GPTs, an early look at the labor market impact potential of large language models. I'm sure that's very interesting. So I just wanted to cover some basic information here about the ChatGPT plugins. Now let's take a closer look. Before we get into all the other details and trying it out, I did want to mention that I did change my settings here in my OpenAI account. And so I had to go into beta features, and then right here there's a slider that I can change that says try a version of ChatGPT that knows when and how to use third-party plugins that you enable. So I did want to mention that I had to do that first before I could do anything else. So here, when you open up the web page for ChatGPT Plus, it defaults to version 3.5. I'm going to choose version 4.0 or GPT-4. And then I'll go to the plugins beta. And since I've already selected this, it has the AI PDF, which you can see here. It's super fast, interactive chats with PDFs of any size, complete with page references for fact checking. So we're going to go ahead and give that one a try first of all. So if you've never seen the plugin store, you can click on this here. It takes it a second to load, and there are many pages here of information in the plugin store. So here we're taking a look at the page where you can start asking it questions. At the top you can see it says the plugins are enabled, and you can see the icon for the AI PDF. I've masked out where I put this file, but I did go ahead and upload a file to a website, and so it's called ProGit.pdf. That's the Git book. And so let's go ahead and take a look at a different tab. This is the GitHub repository for where I found the book. And if I scroll down, you can see here it's Pro Git 2nd edition. And they welcome you, and then they say here that the 1st edition as well as the 2nd edition of Pro Git is open source and under a Creative Commons license. So I thought this would be a good book to go ahead and input into the ChatGPT. It's 506 pages, and we can see that here on the other tab. 506 pages. So let's take a look at the table of contents and see what is going on here in this book. If you've never heard of Git before, it is a source code where programmers save their code and manage it for different projects that they're working on. And there's a lot to it. Obviously, this is 506 pages, and they certainly don't even cover everything. So notice the question that I asked it, or told it, I said download this PDF file so I can ask questions about its contents. And then I hit the enter key, and once I did that, this here like turned red, and it was like active as it was processing the information. And if I scroll to the end of the document, you'll see here it says we finished processing the whole document with the PDF search plugin. What else would you like to know? So we will ask it a few questions, but let's see what it told us here. So here it says the PDF you provided is a book titled Pro Git, written by Scott and Ben, and those are the correct names. It's a comprehensive guide to Git, a distributed version control system for tracking changes in source code during software development. Here are some key highlights. So the first 2 pages, introduction, getting started 3 through 23, Git basics 24 through 88, Git on the server 89 through 134, distributed Git 135 through 170, GitHub 171 through 208, Git tools 209 through 282, customizing Git 283 and 304, Git in other systems 305 through 334, and Git internals 335 through 391. So let's go take a look at the book for a second. So here I've scrolled down to basically page 335, and we can see it starts out by saying customizing Git. And this is the last chapter in the book, I believe. So let's scroll to the end of it. So I scrolled to the bottom of that chapter and it ends on page 366. So let's go back and look. .335 through 391. Let's see where this one ends at. So that's interesting. It seems the page numbers, according to what it's shown here in the book, it says it's page 393, but this says it's page 400 in the PDF browser. So it's a little bit. So let's go ahead and ask it a couple questions here. In Git internals, let's ask it, can you explain pack files? So let's see what it does. So it gave us a very detailed answer. Pack files are a feature of Git that helps to save space and increase efficiency. Here are some key points about pack files from the book Pro Git. What are pack files? How pack files are created? What are pack files composed of? How do pack files save space? Pack files and Git internals, garbage collection, and pack files. And they give some specific commands. So let's go look on page 451 and 452 to see what's there. So here I've gone back to the book on page 450. It's saying identify what file or files are taking up so much space. If you run git gc, all the objects are in a pack file. You can identify the big objects by running another plumbing command called git verify pack. So that's something else we could ask it about. And then if we go down to the next occurrence of it, it's listed there in like a sample on page 451. And slightly further on page 455, it talks about the true git gc. And a little bit further down, it talks about git gc again and how it's running garbage collection on your repository to remove unnecessary files, packing up remaining files into a more efficient format. So I think that was a good question and it summarized it nicely. So let's try another command or question. Tell me about git verify pack. So here you can see it's using the AI PDF plugin, and let's see what it does here. So it's finished, and then it goes on to say, let me know if you need more information about any aspect of Git Verify Pack. So let's ask it another question. Can you make a bullet list of the contributors to this book? Now it's using the plugin. Let's see what it comes up with. and then we'll go compare generally. Okay, so it does go to say it's not a complete list. The book mentions that these are the contributors as of a specific commit. So if we went back to the book and looked, we can see that information does look to be true. And if we look at the introduction to the book, it does show there's 10 chapters, and I think that matches up with the list that it gave during our initial query. And there are also several appendixes, Appendix A, B, and C. So let's figure out what to ask it next. Explain about CVS. So let's see what it's going to tell us about that. And we'll go back and look at the beginning of the book for CVS. So there it completed its answer. Let's go ahead and go back to the book and see about CVS. So here on page 11, it's talking about CVS, centralized version control systems. And then it gets into distributed version control systems. Let's ask it about the history of Git. Can you tell me the history of Git? All right, so there it goes, giving its explanation. So I think that's a good explanation of the history of Git. Let's go back to the book here and see a short history of Git. Early years in Linux kernel maintenance, 91 to 2002. Changes were passed around as patches and archive files. 2002 Linux project began and using a proprietary DVCS called BitKeeper. 2005 the relationship between the community that developed the Linux kernel and the commercial company that developed BitKeeper broke down. And particular Linus Torvalds, the creator of Linux, it prompted him to develop their own tool based on some of the lessons learned. So I think that's a pretty good answer they gave. And let's go back to the ChatGPT and see what else they said here. Design philosophy, rapid development. April 3rd, 2005. By April 7th, it was self-hosting. The first merge of multiple branches took place on April 18th. June 16th, Git managed the release of the 2.6.12 version of the Linux kernel. 2008, GitHub was launched. So there you go. There's another interesting question and answer scenario with this book. Let's ask a few other questions. Can you tell me the common Git commands So there it goes. Let's let it finish the list. So it finished the list. There are how many commands listed here? 16 commands. And these are the ones that I use all the time. Git init, git clone, git add, git commit, git status, git pull, git push, git branch, Git remote -v, we use that a lot. Git diff or git log. So those are really common commands that I know about. So I think that's a great answer. So let's ask it another question. What are the 3 main sections of a Git project? All right, while it's doing that, let's go back to the book and look here. The 3 main sections of a Git project are the working tree, the staging area, and the Git directory. So working tree, staging area, and Git directory. So it looks like it gave our answer here. Now let's ask it, can it be used on Windows and Linux? And so yes, of course it can, and it'll go on to tell us that and give some basic information about installing it, it looks like, and on Mac. So let's ask it this, what is a repository? So there's its explanation of a Git repository. And lastly here it says you can create a new Git repository by navigating to your project's directory in your terminal and running the command git init, which is what I normally do. So that looks good. I'm just going to ask it one other question and then we'll call it quits for this video. Just again wanted to give it a lot of information, see if it processed information from both the beginning of the book, also all the way at the end, which we looked at that with some of the questions and answers. So let's ask it, can you explain what are staged and unstaged changes? So let's see how or what it does with that. So here is the answer it gave, explaining what are unstaged and staged changes. So we could keep asking questions for a very long time. This book is 506 pages or something like 500 pages, give or take. That's a lot of information, and I think it's doing a really good job of answering questions and giving summaries. I think this is a really good plugin to allow you to experiment if you already have an account with the ChatGPT and the ChatGPT version 4 with plugins. A couple other things I decided to ask. Let's ask it to summarize a chapter. So let's go back and say, can you summarize chapter 2 for me? And put it into a bullet list. So let's see what it does. Now it's using the plugin again, so let's give it some time and view its response. All right, here we go. It may take it a bit. So that just took about 30 seconds maybe. And here it has a bullet list talking about how it starts with an introduction to Git basics, the 3 states that Git files can reside in. Then it talks about the Git workflow, how to initialize a Git repository with Git init, how to clone an existing Git repositories using git clone, and then discusses how to record changes using git status, git diff, git add, and git commit commands. It shows how to remove files using git rm for remove, and how to move files with the git mv or move command. The chapter ends with a section on viewing the commit history and using the git log command. So let's go back and take a look at chapter 2. So here we have the information about Git basics, getting a Git repository, initializing a repository, cloning an existing repository, recording changes to the repository, and explaining some of the details about that, getting the status of your files, tracking new files, staging modified files, and various other information. So I'm not so sure it summarized everything like in a great way, but it did summarize it. I think it seems to me it may have left out some information, but I could ask it to write a more detailed summary, but I won't. Well, I think that's enough questions to ask it. Overall, I do think it's working really good, and I think it saves so much time being able to ask questions to PDF documents in this way instead of doing your old school searches for information. And I like how it can format things in bullet lists and paragraphs and just other ways that it formats the information, telling us which pages certain things are on. So it does seem like a really powerful plugin, and if you're looking to try out chatting with PDF documents, you may want to give this one a try. Of course, you have to have the account set up and so forth, as I explained. But once you have that, then you can go to town with it. The other thing is there are limitations to using ChatGPT in this way, and if you start throwing a lot of information at it, you may hit your threshold in 3 hours or less, and then you have to wait before it refreshes itself so you can use it some more. So do keep that in mind also. If you like this channel, please like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified when I post new content.